Did you know that human trafficking happens in every city, zip code, and county of Tennessee? Did you know that 97% of human trafficking survivors in Slavery Tennessee serves are U.S. citizens? Welcome to Human Trafficking at Home and In Slavery Tennessee training series. According to Shared Hope International, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preventing conditions that foster trafficking, each state is evaluated on 41 key legislative components. And over the last 3 years, Tennessee has ranked number 1 in the country for its collaborative work to address human trafficking. In Slavery Tennessee has been the flagship nonprofit that helped create this proven model for success. In our continuing effort to provide community education, we launched Human Trafficking at Home in November of 2020. Human Trafficking at Home features a variety of topics based on relevant and timely issues. This training series seeks to pull back the curtain so you can learn just how In Slavery Tennessee provides comprehensive support services for human trafficking survivors. We will also take a look at specific ways In Slavery Tennessee strategically confronts slavery in our state. For 2021, we plan to have 4 webinars featuring the 4 pillars of how we accomplish our mission: aftercare, advocacy, training, and prevention. Would you like to delve into the nuances of what it's like to address human trafficking on the front lines? Join us for Human Trafficking at Home and learn more about best practices for making a lasting difference together.
Good morning. Thank you and welcome to our Advocacy Edition of Human Trafficking at Home. This morning's installment, we'll be talking a whole lot about advocacy. And while we do, I want to remind you and remind us that advocacy is the support for or recommendation of a particular policy or cause. Our vision at In Slavery Tennessee is to have a slave-free Tennessee, a place where no human being is ever bought, sold, or exploited for gain. So I want to say a special thank you to our sponsors who share this vision with us. Thank you to Fifth Third Bank. Thank you to WH Properties. Thank you to Dr. David Mallory Pittman, DMD. Thank you to L. Hines Consulting. Thanks so much to Wilson Bank and Trust. And thank you to Hermitage Hall. Thank you so much for sharing that vision and sponsoring this edition of Human Trafficking at Home, and of course our no-show brunch, which all the meals went out this morning. If you received a meal, if you purchased a meal from us, we sold about 230 meals. We partnered with Thistle Farms, and they provided the brunch this morning, and I hear that it is fantastic. I can't wait to dive into mine, and we're so grateful for Thistle Farms and that partnership. This was a kind of a double do-good thing this morning, supporting In Slavery Tennessee's mission, as well as supporting the work that Thistle Farms does to deliver resources and work for survivors of prostitution and trafficking. So thank you so much to Thistle Farms as well. I have a really special announcement this morning, and you may have heard already, but the Tennessee Governor Bill Lee released his amended budget a couple of weeks ago that included his listed appropriations. Governor Lee has proposed that In Slavery Tennessee receive a historic and unprecedented $3.5 million state dollars. And let me back up for a minute, because in February, Estn proposed a plan to the administration for a 5-phased new survivor restoration campus to be built over the next 5 to 7 years. And we are so inspired to build a community of healing, housing, and hope. The administration responded with the first of potentially 3 appropriations to support the first 3 phases of this new vision for us. The recommended appropriation is making its way through the legislative process right now. The next couple of weeks are super critical. If you want to get involved to help us get this across the finish line, you can do one or all of the following. You can email, tweet, or text your Tennessee State Representative or Senator. You can learn more and access advocacy resources at inslaverytn.org/survivor restoration campus. I want you to bookmark that page on your internet browser. Return there often, because as we have updates on this process, and as we have updates on where we are and where we're going and what we're doing, you're going to be able to find it right there on that web page. So be sure to bookmark that and return to it often. I want to thank the No Show Ball Brunch ticket holders. And I want to say that you can support our work today by making a donation at endslaverytn.org/give. Today only, all gifts are being matched up to $1,500. So if you were thinking to yourself, oh, I really got to send them $25, I really got to send them $100. Right now, you can double that gift, because we have a donor that's willing to match up to $1,500 in giving today. So if you've been thinking about that, that's been on your heart, do that today and your gift will be matched. So we're now to the point in the program where I want to introduce our advocacy panel. I'm so excited to be joined by these super three ladies. Estn Harris is the principal of Harris Frazier Government Relations. Representative Mary Littleton, Tennessee House of Representatives, District 78, that's Dixon. And Ashley R. Brown, she is the Affordable Housing Program Manager for the Office of Mayor John Cooper. And we are so excited to have all three of you here with us today to talk about how you are advocating in your communities and towards this effort. So thanks so much. Let's start and dive in. Representative Littleton, you've been such a strong supporter of human trafficking. Tell us where that passion came from.
Well, first, let me say thank you very much for letting me be here today, and I welcome everyone that's here to learn more about the human trafficking. I like to say when I first was elected, it was kind of a surprise that I ran to begin with. And when I got here, we were in the War Memorial Building, and if anybody's ever been in there, it was like a maze, really hard to find your way around. So once I found my way around, well, then I had to think about, who do I want to be up here? What do I want? What do I want to accomplish? And I'm a mother of 4 and a grandmother then of 4, but now 5. And so I thought, well, I'm trying to make it a safer place for them to live in. But Chairman Coley from Memphis, he brought me, and let me start with this. He brought freshman women and asked us if we would carry some human trafficking bills. So I guess at the time that wasn't the cool thing to be, or freshmen would be getting those bills. But let me go ahead and say this ahead of time. Now everybody's fighting for the bills. Everybody wants the bills. But when he brought that, one of my very first bills was to relieve a parent once convicted of selling their child for sex. They lost their parental rights forever. And I guess I really didn't know what human trafficking was. I never really even thought about it. And then I realized this is a real problem. And any parent that would do that, you just can't imagine those type things. So ever since that, I've carried anywhere from 2 to 5 human trafficking bills, and this is my 9th year. So this year I have 3, and 2 of those I served on the TBI Human Trafficking Advisory Council, and 2 of these came from that council. So one of them, it adds a human trafficking offender to the Tennessee Standard Treatment Program, as other sex offenders have to take this treatment. So we added human traffickers to that once convicted. And the other one requires law enforcement that takes a person under 18 into custody suspected of prostitution, must call DCS, release a minor to the parent or legal guardian, and give them the number to the human trafficking hotline. So we think those are very important things. They're not going to have to be detained. They're going to immediately be released to someone, and they are to get treatment and be and contact DCS. So we're proud of that. And one of them has already passed. The other one had a little fiscal note, but it's came from behind the budget. Everybody may not understand that, but a lot of things that go behind the budget, we call it the deep dark hole, and it never comes back out. But this one has already come back out. It's going to be on the floor. So once you get something out of from behind the budget, it's something to be very proud of. So that really makes us know that our finance and our governor really knows what a problem it is and is trying to help. And the other one that I want to talk, well, there's two more I really want to talk about. One removes the statute of limitations for prosecution of trafficking for commercial act when committed against a child. So that one is, I think it's made it in the Senate and it's almost finished in the House. And, we're really proud of these because now we all know that our members know what a problem it is too. And so these bills, even though they're so sad and hard to really present, everybody's for you because and wants to sign on because now they realize that we do have this problem. And these bills that we pass are what makes us the number one in the nation. So we're real proud of that. And we want to continue our hard work and try and take care of all the children and adults that have been trafficked. And there's one more. I worked on it some during the summer, and another member did carry it. But I think it's a great bill. If you have a CDL license and you're convicted of human trafficking, you'll lose those licenses forever. So we know that that's how sometimes they do come across the board and go even from state to state, the borders. So I think that's a real good bill as well. So those are the things that I work on, and I work every day to try and make Tennessee a safer place for not just my children and grandchildren, but everyone else's too. So thank you for letting me be here, and I can answer some questions maybe, but this is where my heart's at, and child abuse is, I guess I really concentrate on child abuse. So those little children that are trafficked, but then I realized what happens to them when they become adults, so that we have to take care of them as well. So it all just kind of fits into my little heart now. So thank you very much for letting me be here.
Yeah, I would love for you to talk just for a second, Representative Littleton, about a piece of legislation you carried in 2019 that required all public school educators to be trained on identification, prevention, and detection of human trafficking.
Mm-hmm.
Can you tell us a little bit about the backstory of that? And In Slavery, Tennessee is delivering that training, and I'd love for you to mention that, because when we talk about advocacy, we're also talking about changing systems.
Absolutely.
And that's a big one for changing systems.
It is. It's a great one. My youth leadership in Dickson County, they always try to do something that either changes the county or the state. And so in 2019, they brought, they had a little video. When I walked into the classroom, I'm thinking, yeah, they're just going to have something written down on a piece of paper and they want me to do everything. And oh no, they had this little PowerPoint, and I mean, they were right on, but they wanted every teacher to be able to view a video of what to look for, because, when we first came, everybody's not aware of human trafficking. So they really don't know what to look for, and neither do the teachers. So, Margie and In Slavery worked and put a video together for the teachers to watch every year. Actually it was supposed to be 1 year, but I now think there's some legislation that says every 3 years. But now we find that some of the teachers want it updated every year. Yeah. So they're so proud too to actually know what to look for. But these children came up, these juniors and seniors in the youth leadership, they came up with this idea, and I presented the bill, and Margie made it happen. And it's a marvelous video, and they won the Omni Award across the state for their video. So we're really proud of them. But we're not just legislators now, and it's not just an adult thing. Now our children are thinking about how to make it a safer place too, and to let people realize what's going on in our state and how they can help it. So they're a great group of kids, and I'm very proud of the video. And thank you, Margie, for doing such a good job putting it together. And the children can watch it in the wellness videos that they watched. The parents can opt out, but we're hoping the parents will watch it too, so they'll actually know what to look for in their children, because we never know who they're going to prey on and convince to come over and be trafficked. And so every child's at risk. Every adult, we're just all at risk about it. So yeah. It's a great video, and thank you for helping us put that together and make it so successful.
Yeah, thank you. I really think that that's a pretty special piece of legislation, thinking about how it came about and its intended purposes. The Department of Education really embraced the efforts, and we've had great responses from teachers. So thanks to you, Representative Littleton, for all that you've done, past and present and future, for this issue.
And I do like to say, when we're up here, there is no I. It's all a we.
That's right.
But I gladly, I'm very proud of all of us, and I was very proud to carry the legislation. But There just is no I. It's all a we when we get
Right.
up here. So
Yeah. Thank you. Estn, tell me, give me a little history about your government relations firm and what it does, and what does it mean to represent the Tennessee Anti-Slavery Alliance, which, of course, Estn is the Middle Tennessee representative in the TASA Alliance. Can you talk about that for a minute?
Sure, I'm happy to. I have been lobbying or performing government relations services in Tennessee since about 1987. So I've been doing this a really long time, and the opportunity to represent initially in Slavery Tennessee and then eventually the Tennessee Anti-Slavery Alliance when it was formed was truly the intersection of a personal passion with my professional life. I served for, I think, 10 years total on the board of the Women's Fund, which is an endowment under the Community Foundation of Middle Tennessee. And the Women's Fund organizations across the state, Memphis, Nashville, Chattanooga, and Knoxville, all came together in an historic way that had never happened before around the subject of human trafficking. And it was several years ago, and our greatest effort was to educate people that human trafficking was actually happening in Tennessee. They sort of assumed it only happened in Far East Asian countries or something. So the opportunity to work with task agencies has been really rewarding for me and my government relations firm. We happen to be a 100% female-owned government relations firm. So the issue of human trafficking, like Representative Littleton, is one that has touched our hearts from the get-go. Human trafficking is a scourge on our society, and there is no legislator that wants to see it continued. We were blessed and have been blessed with female legislators because female legislators get it immediately. They understand what it means. And some very enlightened men over the time, like Representative Jim Coley, who recently retired, Representative Littleton mentioned. The other way you sort of get a legislator to understand better is working with the TBI. And if a legislator ever has the opportunity to participate and watch one of the sting operations, they can never get that out of their head. Some of our most passionate supporters are those who have seen what humans are capable of doing to each other. Representing the TASA agencies, like Representative Littleton said, you know, she's been in it since it wasn't cool in it. But now the issue of human trafficking has become one that society understands so much better, and every legislator is a team player, wants to be helpful. It's just up to us now to sort of guide them in the way that they can be most helpful.
So how does that look like every day? So you and your company or your business are down there at the legislature. What does it mean to represent TASA, to sort of lobby for, advocate for bill passage, and some of the things that we feel are very important? I know that you and I worked with a couple of different senators and representatives to get them ideas around legislation this year. What is that? How does that process work?
That's exactly right. They'll often come to us and say, I want to do something to remove the scourge of human trafficking in Tennessee, but they don't know exactly what they want to do. As Representative Littleton referenced, you can do a lot, but if the fiscal impact, if the cost to the state becomes too great, then you have the possibility of having a really good idea that can't get implemented. So we try to approach it in a common sense way and direct and guide the legislature. The chairs of the committees of jurisdiction for human trafficking are all dedicated to the effort, and they only try to help and improve. And it can be something as simple as what Representative Littleton was talking about with the statute of limitations. But it can also be one of our biggest initiatives, which is a financial initiative, has been we have laws against human trafficking. Trafficking another human being is illegal. The challenge becomes when we recover the young women or men, how do we then swing into action and provide them with the resources and the recovery services that they need? So that has been the last couple of years, a big push of TASA is to make sure that the agencies have the ability to fund and cover the costs of trying to recover the young women and men, and enable them to become human again.
Right. Yeah, those community-based solutions for treatment and restoration services, I think, are becoming more and more important. And this historic funding opportunities for TASA and for End Slavery Tennessee will support the idea of a community service-based model. So we're super excited about that potential. How sort of hairy does it get right at the very end when you're trying to get bills passed and appropriations approved? I know in non-COVID years, that means you got to have your walking shoes on. What does that mean in the COVID period?
Well, the legislature at the end of last year, they passed a no-growth budget. They cut everything. There was no appropriation that was salvaged of anyone's pet projects. So the money that we had been getting over the course of the last several years to provide treatment for victims of human trafficking just went away. This year is quite different. In addition to an awful lot of federal funds that have come down with various COVID-related legislation, the state did not suffer tax collection-wise during COVID as it was anticipated that it would. So the no-growth budget has enabled a variety of resources to be funded this year. The legislature has also reopened largely to the advocacy lobbying community. You have to wear a mask, but you can be in the building. Committee meetings are shortened, but this is when having cell phone numbers comes in really handy. And most importantly is having advocates like Mary Littleton, London Lamar, Deborah Moody, Dawn White in the Senate, Paige Wiley in the Senate. I can't be in the secret meetings, but they are, and they speak up and they advocate, and they make a world of difference.
That's great. Thank you so much. And by the way, as we're going through this, please submit your questions in the chat as you're watching this. We're going to go to a Q&A session after we talk with Ashley for a few minutes, and we'd love to get your questions answered. I know that you'll have questions for these amazing women doing incredible work, so be sure you're submitting questions. Ashley, I am so excited to have you on this morning. I'm so excited to hear at the local Davidson County level what the Office of Mayor John Cooper is doing around affordable housing. So tell us, just what are the challenges of affordable, safe housing in Davidson County?
Yeah, thank you so much for letting me be here today. Any chance that I get to talk about affordable housing, much to the bemoaning of my friends and family, I am all about it. So housing, as you know, is a basic human right. It is something that affects every person from every background. For people who are in more vulnerable populations, that housing process is a lot more difficult, especially if there is a language barrier. A lot of folks are coming out of a situation that is incredibly difficult to live through, such as being unhoused or having unstable housing for a long period of time, or other comorbidities like, substance abuse, or having, the list goes on. But without a housing navigator, a lot of times those filling out all of the forms that they need to get done, passing all of the tests that need to happen, or finding just the right community partners to be able to work for them is an incredible challenge and a huge hurdle. So even though Metro Social Services and other departments and other community partners are out there every day working with those vulnerable populations to ensure that people find safe housing to assist them in having a safe and healthy life, they are still there are still challenges, such as the number of units that are available for people to be able to access and finding the right number of vouchers. Right now, there are a ton of people that are on a wait list for a voucher in order to access housing. Even beyond that, right now, because we receive monies through the American Rescue Plan, which, yay, money. Even if we were to give out more vouchers, which we absolutely hope to do, we don't have enough landlords that are willing to accept those vouchers. So you can hand out a voucher, but if they have nowhere to go or no one to accept them, then those are essentially wasted vouchers. And so one thing that we're really encouraging people right now to do is to talk to landlords. If you know people who are in property management or in the housing industry, to talk to them and help them understand why housing is so important and why the voucher system is incredibly important to creating a wonderful mixed income society. So that way our neighborhoods are representative of all peoples, and growing up in an economically rich and diverse environment is so key to having a vibrant community. So we're encouraging folks to, reach out and talk to those landlords. And if there are any concerns about the voucher system, we are working through some of the risk mitigation with that. And if you have any questions, or if they have questions, please reach out to us and the housing director specifically. Her name is Hannah Davis, and she will be happy to walk through those questions that you have and answer all the things that have to do with housing and convince you why accepting vouchers is really something that all landlords should be doing. And hopefully that will help vulnerable populations be able to use them in an effective manner and they don't go to waste in our county.
Yeah, I think we really have kind of shifted our focus, I think, in the next year to this really important issue of housing. We know that safe and stable housing, especially for a trafficking victim, is very challenging. And again, many of the women who come into services with us, and men as well, are homeless. Even if they're skipping from couch to couch to couch, they're still homeless. And if we can't put them in safe and stable housing, that creates or reinforces their vulnerability to trafficking. Tell me what it's like to spend a day in your shoes. What are you doing each day as the manager of the Affordable Housing Program?
So as the Affordable Housing Program Manager, I primarily focus on running the Barnes Fund. So the Barnes Fund specifically donates or grants monies to nonprofit developers that build or preserve affordable units in Nashville. So my job doesn't work directly with vulnerable populations often, but I work with community partners that do. So I am kind of a secondary source for those things that happen within the community. However, I certainly encounter the pejorative view of what affordable housing means. I think that over time, unfortunately, there has been this push for luxury housing or having, this kind of verbiage that insinuates that affordable housing isn't desirable for the community, when really in actuality, affordable housing can be just as luxurious, especially if it's mixed income. So helping folks realize that making units affordable doesn't mean that it's going to affect their neighborhood or change how their neighborhood looks. And so doing a lot of work around talking to people and talking them through what it means to be a good neighbor is just as important as helping the vulnerable populations, because if we change the narrative around what it means for affordability and what affordable housing looks like in our communities, then we can make sure that folks that are entering affordable housing aren't then also encountering this kind of negativity within their communities that they're trying to build upon. So I think that's something that we're really working on, as well as the Affordable Housing Task Force. I've been able to be part of that, and that has been a really inspiring experience. Mayor Cooper put together an Affordable Housing Task Force comprised of diverse peoples from all different kinds of backgrounds in housing to make sure that we're collecting as many opinions and voices as possible. So that way they can develop recommendations for short-term resolutions in the 1 to 3 year term, but also develop long-term goals for what affordable housing looks like in Nashville Nashville, as well as talking to business partners that are moving into Nashville, Davidson County, like Oracle, like Amazon, like so many others that are looking to Tennessee to migrate their businesses here. How can they be community partners with us to make sure that not only are we bringing new people in, but we're ensuring that people can age in place and people can remain in Nashville, because Nashville truly should be a home for everyone. And we want to make sure that the people that want to live here are able to do so in an affordable way.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. That is going to become, I think, increasingly important and part of our mission as well, because we know that sustaining a restorative process for survivors really does, at its core, have to include that safe and affordable, stable housing. So thank you for that. Thank you to the panelists. Don't go anywhere, because we're going to get to Q&A. But first, we're going to hear from District 13 State Senator Dawn White, who couldn't be here with us today. Be sure to keep submitting your questions. We'll get to them right after we hear from Senator White.
Hi, I'm Dawn White, State Senator for Rutherford County. I often get asked why I carry human trafficking legislation. People will say, is it really a problem in Tennessee? People have also said to me that human trafficking is a problem in big cities like New York or a foreign country like Thailand. It is not a problem here in Tennessee, especially in the suburbs and rural Tennessee, people will say. Sadly, I had the same notion before I got elected to public office. Before my eyes were opened by organizations like End Slavery Tennessee. I thought, it's not happening in my community. We live in the suburbs. Nothing like that happens in the suburbs, right? But then I got elected, and I learned about a world that I did not know existed. And yes, it's happening in all of our communities, and even the suburbs. No one and no family is immune to falling victim to human trafficking. I get asked, well then how do we fight it? I believe education about what human trafficking looks like is the first line of defense. That is why Representative Mary Littleton and I sponsored and passed a bill in 2019 that will require family life curriculum used in public schools to include instructions about human trafficking, how to spot it, and how to report it. This bill also requires local boards of education to have each teacher employed by the school system to receive a one-time in-service training to identify what human trafficking looks like. As always, End Slavery Tennessee stepped up and made a video available for training in our school systems. When writing legislation on human trafficking, the most important factor to remember is the victim. Last year, I had a long conversation with a human trafficking victim, and she asked me to do one thing. She said, Dawn, can we remove the statutes of limitation for sex trafficking involving any child under the age of 18? Many victims of human trafficking fear violence against them or their families by their trafficker after being rescued. And there could also be some embarrassment, because often the victim knows his or her trafficker. This session, I sponsored and passed a bill that would give victims under the age of 18, when the trafficking happened, all the time they need to feel comfortable about reporting the crime. Under this bill, the state is allowed to prosecute traffickers without worrying about the statutes of limitations expiring. I recently met a foster mother that had adopted a little girl who happened to be rescued from a motel after her mother had sold her into sex trafficking for drugs. This little girl was only 3 years old when it happened. Not only was that motel in my home county, but that motel was zoned to a school that I taught at for 7 years, and I had students who lived at that exact same motel. You want to talk about hitting home? That definitely hit home for me. To anyone that says, this is not happening in my community, that is completely wrong. It's happening in all of our communities, and we need to be deeply concerned about this problem. During my time in the House and Senate, I've had the honor of carrying several pieces of legislation to strengthen our laws on human trafficking. But I've also had the honor to meet some of the most extraordinary people in Tennessee. I've met victims of human trafficking. I've met foster parents that are taking care of these young victims, and I've met advocates who've dedicated their lives to fighting human trafficking. Thank you, In Slavery, Tennessee, for the difference that you are making in victims' lives, and you're changing the victims' lives each and every day. And thank you for allowing me the honor to being able to speak with you today.
That's great. I'm so excited that she was able to at least have a message. Senator White's been a fierce advocate when she was in the House and now in the Senate. I want to get to our questions, and so if we have some questions that that our panelists can answer, I think we're ready to do that. All right. So Derry Smith, our founder, has asked a question of Estn. How has your day-to-day advocacy work changed from when you first started to today? How did you help change the atmosphere from one where people didn't know about human trafficking, and today when there is an eagerness to engage? Have volunteers helped in any substantial way?
Absolutely. I'll take the first question first. The largest way that advocacy work has changed is that at the beginning, we had to do exactly what Senator White was and Representative Littleton have talked about. We had to convince people that human trafficking was happening here in Tennessee and not just in a foreign country. I'll never forget the first Women's Fund board meeting when we talked about human trafficking, and a friend of mine was sitting next to me and she turned to me and she said, "This is absolutely unbelievable. I will never send my daughter to the bathroom alone at a Titans game ever again." And that was how it became personal to her. So educating legislators and, quite frankly, the general public and constituents of legislators that human trafficking exists in Tennessee was largely what we had to start out doing, convincing them that it wasn't just something happening in a foreign country, it was happening right here. And I think the volunteers and the victims that are willing to tell their stories have probably been the most impactful through the process, in community meetings, in legislative hearings, and in a variety of other ways. Those people that are willing to tell their story and talk about what the services provided and what the impact on their lives have been, have made legislators' eyes open in a way that I certainly could never do alone.
Thank you. We got another question. Okay, this is from Wanda. How does Estn help survivors attain long-term housing? That's a great question, Wanda. We at In Slavery, Tennessee have a number of community partners. We aren't all things for all people. We do what we do really well, and then we partner with other community nonprofit organizations, government organizations in order to find housing for a survivor. The vast majority of the clients that we serve are actually in community housing. They are not being housed by Estn. We have one safe house, and ideal occupancy is 4 to 5 women in that house. If we are so fortunate as to receive the state appropriation, we will quadruple the housing opportunities, as well as create a transitional affordable housing opportunity for victims that's a little more long-term. And so that is exactly what we're trying to do right now. I think over the next 2 to 4 years is increase the amount of housing that we can offer, understanding that that really is the core and that is the basis from which everything else can spring. So great question, Wanda. Thank you for that. Do you have anything, Ashley, that you would want to add to that?
No, I think that's great. There are so many wonderful nonprofits in Nashville, Davidson County specifically, and we're always trying to encourage more nonprofits to get into housing because, like you said, it affects so many different populations, and it can really be a helpful tool for all programmatic nonprofits that are looking to get into housing. And so now with Barnes Fund, we're also looking at how can we build capacity for nonprofits that are really doing well programmatically, but are moving into housing, which is a whole different deep well of information and knowledge. So helping folks through pre-development work, or assisting folks in finding other community partners that have done similar work to assist them in thinking about or thinking through some of the challenges they might encounter in getting into housing. So these are all things that are currently on my radar as the Barnes Fund program manager, about how we can use public money to also broaden the field of nonprofits that are able to do this work. Because if not only is that going to create more units, which at the end of the day we want to happen, it's going to ensure that more diverse peoples are able to access the housing that is so critical to maintaining a health and safe environment for them.
And I know also that there's such a finite amount of space in and around Davidson County. So when you talk about increasing the number of places that we can build or adapt affordable housing, that's going to become very challenging as well.
Yes, construction costs are insane right now, and that's all across Tennessee and all across the country. So there are a lot of challenges with affordable housing, and land is a finite resource. So one day there won't be any more land. So we are thinking through what does rehab and preservation look like? How can we encourage more folks to also get into that? Right now we only have 2 main nonprofits that we fund to do that. But we can definitely encourage more people to get into rehabbing properties. We, as Metro, we do also grant back tax lots. So we do grant land in kind, but the titling process is really difficult, and it often takes nonprofits sometimes a year or more just to clear the titles on a piece of land in order to actually build there. So construction is a long and arduous process. And so we're obviously looking at how we can reduce barriers for nonprofits getting into it, but we also need to think systematically about what we can do as a state to address some of these issues and zoning issues specifically, to ensure that we are, making the most of what we have in terms of land resources and density, and be able to really increase the number of units that are available for folks, because like I said, there is a giant need gap of what is available versus what is needed from our community.
Yeah, that's so yes, you're exactly so right on the spot. Tracy has a question about capacity, how many beds are available in facilities for survivors. There are beds available in nonprofits. Not all are dedicated specifically to human trafficking, and so that's a sort of a difficult question to answer. I can tell you that we have an 8-bed house, although optimal occupancy is around 4 or 5, just because of the challenges of the particular house that we're in. When you put a trafficking victim in another program that is not specifically dedicated to trafficking, many times what happens is it is about sobriety, which is incredibly important in the restoration process. But if you are not also working on the complex trauma that's occurred during trafficking, at the end of the day, you end up with a really sober, really traumatized person, which is not a recipe for success. And so doing a lot of things simultaneously, which is what you're going to get in a program like End Slavery Tennessee, I think is a much better model for success. So Tracy, I would say that we are going to try to increase the number of women and children that we can house exponentially through this new state appropriation, if we're so fortunate to get it. So thank you for that question. All right, Becca Stout has a question. Are there any other bills in the works, like CDL, one mentioned, that holds buyers accountable? Representative Littleton, I know STU also might be able to answer this question. What's one piece of legislation that you're really excited I've got about 10 that are earmarked for me, but what's 1 or 2 that you're really excited about?
I'll defer to Representative Littleton. That's her neck of the woods.
Even know where to start about which ones, but there are several. We've been kind of comparing them to other states that have passed legislation. That's where the CDL one came from, is Georgia. But as far as buyers accountable, I'm not sure what we're looking for here.
So
I'd
I
have to
think
have the whole list in front of me because there's probably 30 of them out there, and I just didn't prepare myself with all of those.
I will jump in and say making trafficking a predatory offense so that the offender is serving 100% of their time is really important. Increasing the penalties for those who are trafficking a child. So now it's going to be a Class A felony for every trafficker who traffics a person under the age of 18. Prior, it was only under 15 that was an A felony. There have been changes to the defense doctrine. So if that passes, that will allow a trafficking victim to offer a defense against a charge of criminal activity, that they were being trafficked. There are just some really good bills, interesting bills out there. There's also a bill that's going to create sort of a task force of folks who are going to come together to recommend treatment and services for juvenile victims of trafficking. And it is through that process that I think we can begin to codify some restorative processes. So when I talk about codifying, I mean passing legislation that requires a community-based response to trafficking, so that we are doing that in a way that is consistent, and we recognize the process of a restorative service. We have a lot of bills that we've passed in the last, decade that have strengthened the laws that we have on the books to respond to trafficking. Many have been around strengthening our criminal code to hold buyers and traffickers who are buyers or promoters accountable. But we are now sort of diving into codifying a victim service process. And I think that's kind of the last frontier for us. So thanks for that, Becca. I appreciate that question. Do we have one more question? Great. Sherry wants to know, how can your local community colleges help support ESTN and victims? Does anybody want to jump in on that one?
They can join a group. I know that in slavery is in every county and every college. So if you join that group, then you learn more about it, and you'll get involved with the fundraisers and all of the things, but you'll also get to learn maybe some of the victims, and just join in, and they'll teach you everything that you need to know about how to get involved. But that's what you need to do, is just join up with the groups. And I know Estn knows a lot of the groups, but In Slavery seems to be the one in Middle Tennessee that does the most work here for us. So that would be I would think, because Margie does a great job, and Estn does a great job of representing in the House and the Senate for us legislators.
Thank you for that. Yeah,
I would also add that our community colleges can encourage their students towards degrees that are used in the recovery and help. Social workers, therapists, alcohol and drug abuse counselors. We almost can't get enough of those type professionals these days to be able to work in the behavioral health centers and the other service areas where we need them. So encourage the students to enter into a profession that would allow them to serve victims.
that's great. I could not have said that any of that better than you guys have just said it. And so I want to thank our panelists so much this morning. They have added such rich context to the issue around trafficking, and now, of course, safe and affordable housing. So thank you, Estn. Thank you, Representative Littleton, and thank you so much, Ashley, for being with us. I'm now going to pivot to another short interview from Senator Dawn White. She has a special recognition that we're so excited for her to present.
Derry, congratulations on your retirement. The House and Senate wanted to honor you with a joint resolution. What an amazing career you've had. You founded In Slavery, Tennessee. You were named Most Admired CEO and a Woman of Influence by the Nashville Business Journal. And you received the Outstanding Service Award for the Tennessee Human Rights Commission. And last but not least, you testified in front of Congress. But most importantly, I want to thank you for the countless hours and support that you have given to human trafficking victims. Through your time at In Slavery, Tennessee, you have given victims hope for a better life. Thank you for all that you have done for Tennessee and for victims. And we wish you the very best in retirement.
Thank you so much, Senator White. Appreciate you so much for giving us those videos. Obviously, that significant recognition for the work that Derry Smith has done in the state of Tennessee and for the state of Tennessee on behalf of victims and survivors of human trafficking is worth such recognition and thanks from all of us. I have had the privilege of being a close friend of Derry's for over a decade. And I could do probably a whole just podcast by myself, panel by myself, just talking about all the ways in which she has influenced me and influenced the work that's being done in the state of Tennessee and then out into the nation. So thank you to Derry Smith for the legacy that you have left behind. We will work hard every day to make sure that your visions continue to flourish in the state of Tennessee. So thank you so much. So I want to wrap up and do a little bit of housekeeping here at the end. I want to thank our panelists again, thank our sponsors so much for our shared vision. We want to remind you that your gifts are being matched up to $1,500 today. That's today only. You can double your impact. You can make a donation at enslaverytn.org/give. I want to talk just for a minute about a new event that we're going to have. Really excited about this event. It's drive-in and drive-out trafficking. It is a brand new socially distanced, friendly event that can accommodate up to 100 cars. Dine at one of the on-site food trucks, check out our special partner booths, and settle in for a screening of I Am Jane Doe. It's a documentary that chronicles the epic battle that several American mothers waged on behalf of their middle school daughters, victims of sex trafficking, via Backpage.com. And I'll be able to tie that into the state of Tennessee. And I can't wait to talk to you about that at that drive-in and drive-out trafficking event. It's new, it's going to be exciting, it's socially distanced. And if you're like me, I am looking for any excuse to eat at one of the food trucks. So that should be a really fun event. That's going to be Saturday, June 12th at Cumberland International Trucks in Lebanon, Tennessee. We have had for a couple of years now an awesome relationship, awesome partnership with Cumberland International Trucks, and we're excited to be doing this event with them at their facility in Lebanon, Tennessee. Again, that's Saturday, June 12th. Special drive-in ticket prices for those tuning in today and available only today and tomorrow. So today and tomorrow, special pricing on the drive-in and drive-out trafficking ticket. I think it's going to be $5 off even the early bird ticket, which is going to go on sale Monday. So if you want to attend that event, you can get special pricing today and tomorrow. Go to endslaverytn.org/drive-in. I am super excited about that event. I think it's going to be so fun. Again, special ticket price today, and then the early bird tickets go on sale Monday. Lastly, don't forget to act right now. 3 minutes of your time could mean that $3.5 million comes to In Slavery, Tennessee to build a survivor restoration campus. Again, healing, housing, hope. Communities for healing, housing, and hope. That's our new rally cry. Visit our website to learn more, enslaverytn.org/survivor restoration campus. Again, bookmark that site. So thank you for spending some of your Saturday morning with us. We've had a great time talking to you today about advocacy. Have a great rest of the weekend.